has been here 10 years. The fear, the horror, the hell is this guy? Come after me, arrest me. Let's just get it over with. Tough guy. You know, I don't give a damn. But I care about my community. I care about this community. The hell are they doing? These guys need to grow up. They need to stop. And we need to push back. And I'm sorry to be so clear, but that kind of bloviating is exhausting. So, Tom, arrest me. Let's go.
There's so many politicians, from Cory Booker to Gavin Newsom, trying to play Donald Trump's fascist takeover of the country to work in their favor. You never really know when or why they launch into monologues like that. But it seemed to have worked on sorry-ass Tom Homan.
What's your response?
Well, first of all, it's just ridiculous. That reporter from MSNBC, he's a joke. He's a dishonest reporter. What we discussed was, for those protesters that cross the line, I've said it many times, you can protest, you got your First Amendment rights. But when you cross that line, you put hands on an ICE officer, or you destroy property, or I say that you're impede law enforcement, or you're knowingly harboring, concealing illegal alien, that's a crime. And the Trump administration is not going to tolerate it. You cross that line, we're going to seek prosecution in the Department of Justice. Then the reporter asked me, well, could Governor Newsom or Mayor Bass be arrested? I said, well, no one's above the law. If they cross the line and commit a crime, absolutely they can. So there was no discussion about arresting Newsom. And so, you know, what he's done, he's failed that state. He waited 2 days of that city burning and people getting hurt, officers being assaulted before he made any declaration of an unlawful assembly.
Fox News' Lawrence Jones must have been disappointed after playing Tom Homan videos of Gavin Newsom and Representative Maxine Waters telling him and agents to target them instead. Because the whole time before that, his energy was dripping with, "You go tell him, Dad." But it wasn't really picked up by Marblemouth, who decided to go after Jacob Soboroff instead. You know, I actually didn't think he'd fold on all this tough talk so easily. So Newsom kept going in, calling out president's actions.
Well, I mean, look, Donald Trump has created the conditions you see on your TV tonight. He's exacerbated the conditions. He's, lit the proverbial match. He's putting fuel on this fire ever since he announced he was taking over the National Guard. An illegal act, an immoral act, an unconstitutional act, and we're going to test that theory with a lawsuit tomorrow.
Well, I was going to ask you that. Sorry to interrupt you, but Governor, so that's news. If you're going to sue the administration, tell me a little bit about it. Give us a preview of this lawsuit.
Well, under his executive order, it specifically notes, and under what the DOD did, is they had to coordinate with the governor of the state. They never coordinate with the governor of the state. I've worked with the National Guard. We've deployed the National Guard. We did 3,000+ folks have been doing logistics work and fire recovery work, and they're fighting the fires, the rattlesnake teams. We did the same back in George Floyd. We have no problem working collaboratively in a mutual aid system with local law enforcement, but there's a protocol, there's a process. He didn't care about that.
Stephen Miller, other people have used the word insurrection about the activity on the streets of Los Angeles.
Yeah, this is just, they're trying to incite violence. They're trying to impose the kind of rhetoric that only makes conditions worse, that quite literally put people's lives at risk. And they're intentionally and knowingly doing that.
He called out the illegal action of Trump usurping authority over the state's National Guard for his plan of inciting the city to push back on his violence. It's such a simple response that too many elected Democrats are too afraid of saying without any equivocation. Because they're usually too worried about whether or not the people that openly hate them, and basically call them communists, socialists, and Maoists all at the same time, to highlight the reality of what we're all seeing.
All of this is about immigration enforcement and the type of well, go ahead, feel free to speak.
I know, and I don't mean even to cut you off. I think it's about something much more. This is about authoritarian tendencies. This is about command and control. This is about power. This is about ego. My way or the highway. This is a consistent pattern of practice, of recklessness. This guy has abandoned the core principles of this great democracy. He's threatening to go after judges he disagrees with, cut off funding to institutions of higher learning. He's on a cultural binge. He's rewriting history, censoring historical facts. This is something completely different, and this is part of that ongoing play that is unfolding in front of our eyes. It is a serious moment under the guise of immigration, but it's much deeper than that.
There's no better time to correct the record and illustrate the reality of what we're seeing than as it's happening. Don't wait for midterm campaigns to tell people what we're witnessing and what this administration is normalizing and that it's not normal. So it's a good thing Newsom stopped that bullshit narrative that this is about immigration somehow, when we've seen this administration ignore immigrants that don't fit the criminality mold that they've capitalized on to divide so many Americans. After we've seen this president literally make up an entire fake genocide for the purpose of bringing in some white South Africans as the kinds of migrants that he actually wants here.
How did you find out that the President of the United States was going to usurp your authority and deploy your National Guard here in California?
I got a call from a staffer. No heads up whatsoever. And again, we're here to support local law enforcement. There's a mutual aid process. Local law enforcement had no needs. They were not requesting any additional resources. I've got 100 now. I have 175 CHP officers, technically trained officers, tactical teams to address Donald Trump's mess. We're here to support local law enforcement, the sheriff's office, LAPD, but they didn't need that support. He made this up. This is a manufactured crisis in order to get under the tent to start to stretch credulity and to begin the process of moving inevitably towards a constitutional questioning crisis around posse comitatus. And it's, I think, inevitable. That's where he's going.
We need more of it. More governors, senators, and congresspeople that have direct knowledge and experiences that should be relayed to the members of the public that are directly affected by this president's actions. They should be told about it as it's happening, because there are way too many media organizations and political yes men in place to refine and repeat the alternative realities that this administration needs to be accepted in order to keep some kind of resistance down. Maybe I'm way too tired of watching this violent MAGA movement do whatever it wants, but this is where Governor Newsom then lost me. Watch.
You made a point a moment ago. These images are unacceptable. These kids on the car, the folks that are taking advantage of this, these aren't peaceful protesters, a lot of these folks, a lot of great people out there doing the right thing. But you get these insurgent groups coming in, sort of these anarchists that are in there to create real problems. And they're just playing right into Donald Trump's hand. And they need to be called out. They need to be arrested. It is wrong to destroy other people's property, and it is wrong to create the conditions that only exacerbate this. But Donald Trump, at the end of the day, is the sponsor of these conditions.
We give you the opportunity. You mentioned that there are people out there causing mischief and mayhem. What's your message to those people who are out there tonight? Not the peaceful protesters that are out there protesting for the rights of immigrants, but for the people that are doing damage to buildings, to law enforcement out there.
Well, they're doing more than damage to buildings and to property. They're potentially damaging the very foundation of our republic. The democracy is in the balance. I mean, you're seeing these authoritarian tendencies now are being acted out by this administration. And we're case in point as it relates to nationalizing, federalizing the National Guard, threatening now to put in Marines. So I hope these people would pause and just consider. Now, some of them, they want that kind of chaos. Some ways, they're adjacent to where Donald Trump is. But the peaceful protesters, we want to keep them safe. We want them to exercise their fundamental rights. We want to keep those that are enforcing the laws in a respectful and responsible way also safe.
Now, I'm sure many people can get behind Newsom's call to not participate in this growing violence that these fascists have in mind. But, throughout history, the victims of oppression and state-sponsored violence are always told to sit there and take the unprovoked attacks to their chin, to give their lives to the groups of people that would go out and celebrate after taking those innocent folks' lives. Some of the energy of this response is to get the quiet talkers that are in charge, the ones that swore to protect the Constitution, to now finally spring into action. Leadership has proven over and over and over again to care more about things like, self-driving cars than the mass murder of citizens. There's nothing admirable about speaking kindly while killers attack your communities.
When you're talking about peaceful protests, we're hearing the noises outside as this crowd is getting closer and presumably more violent as they're coming up through the streets here. I know it's nice to talk about peaceful protests.
That's not peaceful, what was happening. It's not peaceful for people to be on the highways. It's not peaceful for people to throw rocks or bottles. That's not peaceful.
So then how do we reconcile the difference? Obviously, there's frustration with the Trump administration and the feds, but as LAPD and the Sheriff's Department try to distance themselves from the actions of these immigration actions and work being done, they're against authority in a lot of ways. They're standing outside City Hall. This is your office. It's not necessarily against you. How do you distance yourself but also kind of try to keep it peaceful at a time where it's
Well,
anti-authoritarian.
and let me just tell you that I don't think there's any equivocating on nonviolence. And if you are going to entertain violence, if you are going to try to take over a freeway, then you are going to suffer the consequences of doing that. I don't think that LAPD, the sheriff, and certainly not myself, are not shying away from statements like that.
Every elected official, from the governor to the mayor of Los Angeles to myself and others, please, if you intend to protest, do it respectfully and peacefully. That is a tenet of what it means to be an American, the right to be able to peacefully protest. But this kind of thing, setting cars on fire, only gives Donald Trump the images and the response that he wants in order to be able to try to escalate even further.
Yeah. All right, Lieutenant Governor, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
You know, right-wing militia groups literally advertise their training and their stockpiling of guns and weapons for the sake of one day attacking and killing law enforcement officers and elected officials. They count on the people that come out and protest in favor of equality and human rights to be too afraid to give just as many middle fingers to authoritarian actions like this. And the warnings come from people like Karen Bass and the lieutenant governor there. They're meant to avoid stoking confrontations. But when the occupying president is the one stoking them and calling peaceful people violent, you just become sitting ducks in the narrative that they're pushing regardless of the reality. The truth has to be told more times than the repetitive lies of this administration's propaganda machine.
What you need to know about this crisis in California is that it is of Donald Trump's making. Anytime a protest turns violent, that's unacceptable. But California has made it clear that between local and state authorities, they have the means to be able to keep the peace. They don't need Donald Trump. They don't need the National Guard. Donald Trump is sending in the National Guard to create a conflict. Not to solve a problem, but to create a problem. Because Donald Trump has always wanted to create an excuse to impose martial law, to invoke the Insurrection Act. Donald Trump has been undergoing a comprehensive campaign since he was sworn in to try to destroy our democracy, to try to undermine the rule of law. And so what you need to know about the steps that Donald Trump is taking right now is that it is not designed to try to calm a serious situation. It is designed to inflame the situation. It is designed to increase the chances for violence so that Donald Trump will have an opportunity to further destroy our democracy by invoking some kind of martial law. This is a really serious moment. I can't say for certain he's going to do it, but I want to make sure that everybody reads this situation and interprets the developments through the right prism. And the prism is pretty simple. Donald Trump is trying to make the situation worse, not better.